Good morning and welcome to the General Licensing Subcommittee. First item on the agenda is to nominate Chair. Could I ask for nominations of Chair, please?
I nominate Councillor Ajit Atwell.
I second that.
Councillor Atwell, would you like to come up and take the chair, please?
Good morning, ladies and gents. Happy New Year to you all, first of all, for 2022. We have a better one than last year and the year before. Welcome to today's meeting, General Licensing meeting regarding the Bustlers Market. First of all, if we just start by introducing ourselves. I'm the chair for today. My name is Councillor Ajit Atwell.
My name's Lucy Keeler. I'm from Legal Services and I'm here to assist the councillors today.
I'm Mark Dunn. I'm here to represent Bustler Market Limited.
I'm Olivia Pritchard, Managing Director of Bustler Market Limited.
I'm Andrew Dark and I'm the Events Manager at Bustler Market.
I'm David Wilkinson. I live over the road from Bustler's Market.
I'm Anne Walker. I'm representing the licensing team.
Councillor Paul Hazelgrave for Abbey Ward.
Councillor Ruth Skelton, one of the panel members today.
And I'm Jackie Waring. I'm the Appeals Officer. Thank you.
Do we have any apologies?
No apologies.
There's no late items to be introduced by the chair. Is there any declaration of interest, please? Nope. Right, receipt of an application for a variation of a premise licence at Bustler Market, the Chocolate Factory, Siddles Road, Derby. I think that's over to you, Mrs. Walker.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Yes, we've received an application for a variation of a premises licence at Bustler Market, the Chocolate Factory, Siddles Road, Derby, DE1 2QD. And it was received by the Derby City Council's licensing team on the 19th of November. The sale by retail of alcohol, the supply of alcohol or on behalf of a club to a member of the club, provision of regulated entertainment and the provision of late night refreshment must be licensed under the Licensing Act 2003. Officers have delegated powers to deal with variations to premises licences where there are no relevant representations received. However, this is not the case with this particular application, and that's why we're here at committee today. As I said, the application was received on the 19th of November 2021. A copy of that application can be found at Appendix 1 in your pack. The variation briefly relates to the extension of the terminal hour for licensable activities on Fridays and Saturdays, with the activities ending at 1 o'clock in the morning with close of premises at 1:30. The non-standard time to be added for New Year's Eve of 3 additional hours. Licensable activities until 2:30 with the close of premises at 0300 hours. The addition of licensable activities to include the performance of dance and anything else of a similar description, and removal of all the existing conditions in Annex 2 of the existing premises licence to be replaced with updated conditions that have been agreed with the police and environmental health that are attached in the application in Appendix 1. Within the consultation period, the licensing team has received one relevant representation from one other person, and that is attached at Appendix 2. The current licensable activities, the days and times of those, are listed in 4 4.5 and 4.6 of the report. The premises licence holder is currently Bustler Market Limited. The proposed days and time of the licensable activities are listed in 4.10 of the report. And the designated premises supervisor at the premises is Mr. Andrew Dark. The location of the premises is attached to Appendix 3 of the report, and a copy of the current premises licence is attached to Appendix 4. The committee is obliged to determine the application with a view to promoting the 4 licensing objectives. And in making its decision, the committee is also obliged to have regard to the Licensing Act 2003, the national guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act, and the Council's own licensing policy, together with the Human Rights Act 1998. So, with all that in mind, the options open to committee today are listed in 1.4 of the report, and that is they can decide to grant the application as it stands, modify the conditions of the licence, or reject the whole or part of the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Walker. Has anybody got any questions for Mrs. Walker? No?
Chair, if I could just ask a question. Thank you. Mrs. Walker, would you just be able to explain to the councillors what the process is when an application comes in terms of advertising and things like that?
Yes, there is a requirement for the applicant to advertise the variation by means of a blue notice on the premises or in the vicinity of the premises. The application, details of the application must go into the local paper once, and on acceptance of a valid application, it is listed on the council's website.
I'm grateful, Mrs. Walker. And then just a further question from me is, how long has this premises been in operation for?
I'm not sure. The licence was granted. The last licence was granted in January 2021. I'm not sure if there's one that was.
I'm grateful, Mrs. Walker. Give me a question asked later on. Thank you.
Okay.
Any more questions? Okay, sir. Mr. Wilkinson, interested party, do you want to tell us what you've got to tell us?
Yeah, the only objection I have is...
Do you want to pull your mask off if you feel more comfortable?
Yeah, the only objection I have is the actual blusters being open and gone 12 o'clock, because when everybody vacates the premises, it's between 50 and 200 people, and they all congregate outside my bedroom window. Not all of them, but quite a few, and it goes on for over an hour to an hour and a half of people waiting for taxis or lifts, etc. And that's my main concern, because they're not quiet. They urinate in places where they shouldn't do. People are vomiting, and when people are drunk, they obviously shout and scream and make quite a lot of noise. And that's my objection. Because if they close at 1 o'clock, 1:30, it's going to be 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock before I can go to sleep. And my usual bedtime's like before 12.
Do you have anything else to add? Is that your only objection? I mean,
Well, the actual mess that they leave as well, because obviously when they have rave bingos, people are drinking before they actually go in. They discard all the rubbish everywhere. They actually let people out with alcohol in plastic cups. And obviously, they get thrown all over the place. And that's my only concern.
anybody got any questions? Councillor Skelton.
Thank you. I was just wondering, are you sure that the people obviously causing the noise and the mess, etc., have actually come out of Bustler Market, or are there any other pubs or clubs and stuff nearby where they could have come from?
I'm 100% sure they come out of Bluster Market because I live across the road from them and they all congregate outside the entrance to this premises, and my bedroom window is 8 feet away from the actual path.
How often, Mr. Wilkins, do you experience this? Is it most weekends or just as and when?
It's not every week. You know, at first it was a great thing for the area for Blusters, and I've got no objection to them being a street market and having events, but it's the length of time they want to stay open till and having no consideration for others. They did actually, I did complain once about the noise and they did actually do something about it. But the second time they had a gin and whiskey weekend, it's just the same as it was before.
So when you've gone in there with a complaint, they actually have complied and took
Once.
That's the only time you've complained?
And I went in and thanked them afterwards for doing so.
Any more questions for Mr. Wilkinson?
Chair, if you just allow me just to ask a question. Mr. Wilkinson, have you got a copy of the paperwork in front of you?
I have.
Would it be possible for you to outline whereabouts you actually reside on that map, just so the councillors can see?
I think it's been marked with an X.
I thought that was the premises location, but I may be
straight
incorrect.
facing the entrance. You've got a footpath on their side, a road, which is a two-way, and then a footpath my side, and then a grass verge, which is 8 foot from my bedroom window.
Chair, if you're content, what I'll do is if I go over with my papers to Mr. Wilkinson and just get him to mark on, because obviously for your deliberations, it'll be useful for you to be able to see the locations.
So, where's that access? The entrance is there,
Yep.
and I live on the ground floor of the block of flats. Yes.
Okay, great, that's fine. Thank you, that's useful.
Okay.
Sorry, where did you say the entrance was? That X there?
That there.
That there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I just have one further question for Mr. Wilkinson. Mr. Wilkinson, you say that you had on a previous occasion gone into the premises. What action was actually taken by them at the time? Can you just explain to the councillors, please?
Yeah, it was because obviously the noise and the people outside my premises and on the road and that. The next time they had an event, a late one, till I think 12ish or something like that, they actually did something about it. I don't know what, but I think they spoke to the security officers there, and it was completely fine. But until, obviously going on till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, that is my concern. And I shouldn't have to keep going in complaining for them to do something about it.
So, Mr. Wilkinson, just when you're saying they did something about it, was it that people then didn't congregate in the area close to your location at that after you made that complaint?
Not after the complaint,
okay.
no.
Thank you.
Just another quick question for you, Mr. Wilkinson. How long has this place been operating opposite your premises?
They had premises down at the bottom of Siddles Road, and they moved in, I think, January or February.
Last year, 21, yeah? Okay.
As a street food market.
And when was the time when you went in and complained? When was it?
I can't remember to be exact, but I think it was after their first late event.
Yeah. Okay. Mrs. Walker?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can confirm the chocolate factory licence was first granted on the 14th of January 2021. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Chair, if you'd like to offer the applicant the opportunity to ask any questions of Mr. Wilkinson.
Anybody got any questions for Mr. Wilkinson?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Mr. Wilkinson, have you made any other complaints? Have you made any to the Environmental Health Department? And what action was taken by them?
Yes, I've complained 3 times to the council, and they've passed it on into environmental health, and I've had no come back from any of them.
Can I also ask, did you receive an email from myself regarding the application? I sent one on the 12th of, the 7th of December this year to the email address that you actually put the application in on.
I can't actually remember, to be honest.
Okay, thank you.
What was can you give me the email address?
We don't need that, Ron. I mean,
Oh, right,
it's okay.
okay.
You've obviously not replied back to, so that's fine. Have you got any more questions, Mr. Anybody else got any more questions for Mr. Wilkinson? Okay, it's over to the team of Bustler Market then, please.
Thank you, Chair. As you're aware, a licence application was submitted to extend the hours for the Bustler Market. It's an extra hour for licensable activities, so from the 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, closing at 1:30 instead of 12:30, and also the New Year's Eve. They've only got 12 o'clock on the licence. So when the licence was put in initially, I think there was some bad advice given, and New Year's Eve they got till 12, which it's just not. They cannot operate a business at 12 o'clock. So we contacted the police and environmental services and any other responsible authorities that we needed to, just to discuss a way forward. Some of the conditions on the existing licence weren't enforceable. They weren't, I would say, current to the general trend that we have nowadays on licences. So it needed an upgrade, really. So having spoken to the police and environmental services, we said, look, we'll put the application in. Is there any issues with the timings? And they said, as long as the conditions are on there and they abide by the conditions, it's going to be a better situation all round with the extra conditions. I think there was 12 conditions on the old licence and half of them weren't enforceable. I think there's 24 on there now that are enforceable, giving the responsible authorities far more control over the premises. I fully understand Mr. Wilkinson's complaint and concern. I've got no problem with that, and that's why on the 7th I did send an email, and I invited him to outline his concerns and see if we could address them in any way whatsoever, and invited him to a meeting if he indeed wanted to come. Fully understand that he doesn't have to, and doesn't have to reply, got no reply, so I presume that the conditions that I forwarded to Mr. Wilkinson were adequate, and it was okay with them. I did ask if there was any other things that we could actually add on there that would sort of satisfy his concerns. As far as the added time, having spoke to the police, with staggered timings don't necessarily work, I know that. But in this instance, when the venue shuts at 12 o'clock, you do get a lot of people leaving the venue because it's still quite early doors on a Friday and a Saturday, and sort of going over into the city centre, which again causes issue. We thought, well, if we make it 1 o'clock, there's less likely people going into the city because they've spent the night and they're going to disperse and they're going to go home, and it's not going to cause any extra additional impact in the city. Looking at the concerns that Mr. Wilkinson has, I mean, Olivia and Andrew take it very, very seriously, and they've tried to do everything they can to actually negate this issue. The thing I would say, and again I'll let Olivia explain to you what has been put in place to actually negate the issues that is being experienced. If they can do it right, and Mr. Wilkinson just said then that it can be done, because when he's been over and he's had a word, the problem ceased. So if it ceases then, it can cease an hour later. I've got no doubt about that at all. And with the extra conditions in place and the extra provision that they're putting in, I've got no doubt that this can run effectively without any further concerns. The issues that Mr Wilkinson's got about the bingo, that's that's an event that happens sporadically. It's not every week. This extra hour is just for licensable activities to prolong the normal everyday activities that they would normally experience on a Friday and a Saturday. The bingo is an outside agency that comes in now and again to give a little bit of a different vibe to the area. If that's a major problem, then obviously that needs to be addressed by the people that are putting that on. If I can, if you don't mind, Chair, if I can put it on to Olivia. Now, Olivia is the MD. She's the premises licence holder, and I'd just like to just explain what provisions have been put in place after we had the complaints initially.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm really sorry about the disruption that it has caused to your living. We genuinely are, it's not what we're here to do at all. So as we moved to the chocolate factory only because our old home got demolished as part of the Castlewood development, so we had to move up the road to where we are now. And since we reopened in April when the restrictions re-lifted, we were extremely busy, like busier than we had probably ever been as the business. And I think that was just pure pent-up demand of people needing to go out and socialise with their friends, not having done so for so many months. So we did have unprecedented demand when we did reopen, and we did see that subside after the first sort of month of reopening. We did manage that as the issues came around with making sure that all rubbish was collected, litter picked during the event on the streets and after the event as well as making sure that the noise was always kept to a noise level. And our closing times for normal Bustler markets is 11 o'clock, so all music and everything is turned off at 11 o'clock. Because of the size of the venue, we needed to ensure that the revenue that we were having would justify us being in a size of that premises, which is why we then do have other people come in and use that venue for different events. The bingos that Mr Wilkinson has gone on about are something that would happen once every 2 months. They do finish at 10:30. New Year's Eve was a one-off occasion, obviously. If we closed at 10:30 for a New Year's Eve party, it wouldn't quite have the same effect. The need for the extra hour is just so that we have got that chance, if we do want to open later, to be able to say to people you can close at midnight and have everyone off by 1, just to make sure that we are covered on the licence, to make sure that we aren't doing anything wrong. From what we are doing as a company is we've got a noise complaint log, so if we have somebody in there doing sound checks, we'll go out when they're doing the sound checks, stand pretty much near Mr Wilkinson's window-ish with a decibel reader and take readings from that. We'll always log those in our logs as to how loud that will be. Again, through the evening, if anybody does complain or if we feel as a company that the music is too loud, we will go out there and do readings to make sure that everybody is compliant and it's not too loud, because we are, I think that we are quite a respectful company, and I wouldn't want to have that disturbed outside of my house, and I don't think we would take, we do take that quite seriously. When it comes to the noise of taxis and things, we have worked now since the complaint with Albatross cars, and if any other taxis do come, and we do have them we have asked them to come further up the street, so up John Street now where it's all pretty much knocked down, we have asked Albatross and other taxi firms to come and collect people from further up. We do have staff once the event has finished that go and marshal that, so they will try and usher people up the street away from the premises, away from the premises and away from the flats, further up the street so that they can wait for their taxis away from the residential areas. But I'm sure that everyone will understand when people have had a few drinks, it isn't the easiest thing to usher people up, but we do our best to try and move people up. Also, especially if we've had queuing outside of the event where people have been having a few drinks before they come into the premises, before the event starts, we do go and do a litter pick. We do have bins out on the street that not everybody uses, but we do try and encourage people putting rubbish in bins. And again, after the event, we will go out and litter pick on that night, as well as the following working day, to go and clear up any rubbish that we can get from anywhere on the grass verges or the street as well. That's all part of like our opening and closing checklist, so it's something that has to be done from us and all staff members and and managers know that that has to be done. And I think that's pretty much all I've got to say about what we do as a premises to try and mitigate anything.
Thank you.
Olivia, can you just explain what you did about the people urinating and going on to private property?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot that bit. So where the court, they've got like a little courtyard that goes on to where their flats are, and unfortunately when it was majority of the time when it was summertime and we had got quite a queue outside, we did have people being idiots and going across the road to go to the toilet. So we now, before any event that we put on, we put a crowd barrier in front of there to stop people going into the courtyard to urinate in there with a sign on it saying, please don't urinate in here. And we do offer people come to the front of the gate, and we do let them come in and use the toilet if they come and ask us before we open the doors, or if they're in the queue, we'll let them come in and just use the toilet and then nip back out. Thank you.
Thanks, Olivia. As you can see, from the initial complaint that Mr Wilkinson had that was in the summer, we'd got a lot of issues with the COVID. We've got a lot of issues with people not going out, and then when they come back out again, they were overexcitable. Some people were. They weren't used to drinking. There was a lot of 18-year-olds that weren't 18 and never been out before, and it did cause a few issues with a lot of premises, not just the Bustler Market. The extra hour, as Olivia just mentioned, is generally to give them a bit of leeway to sort of say, right, we're shutting at about 12, half 12, we want you all to go, but then they're not going to be breaking any licensing rules. That's what it's for. I don't think, unless there's going to be the odd event, that it's going to have a major impact to any different to what it is now. The conditions that we've looked at on here that specifically address Mr Wilkinson's concerns are added on here. There's one at 17, the designated supervisor, which is Andrew there, shall ensure that clear prominent notices are up there, and they're going to have pretty much signs everywhere to say, look, do this. They're also going to be putting signs up there to say, look, designated taxi will perhaps be Albatross, and they've already discussed with Albatross, this is what we want you to do, to try and negate some of the issues that we've got with people collecting. Number 18, we've got our disposable materials will be kept at a minimum to help eliminate problems with litter to the front of the premises. Bins and empty glass bottles will be moved to relevant bin areas at responsible times, ensuring minimal nuisance caused to local residents during early morning and late evening hours. So we're trying to put conditions on here that are enforceable so that the responsible authorities have got powers to actually say, look, that gentleman's having issues. You can't be doing this. And it sort of also is a good indication to show the staff, when they're going through staff training, look, these are the conditions on this licence, these are what we want you to be adhering to. We must do this, otherwise we're going to be in breach and we're going to have some serious trouble. There's one here, any noise caused from licensable activities will be monitored, and any complaints from local residents dealt with in a sympathetic manner. These complaints will be recorded in a specific log. There's one there for nominated taxi company. If it is authorised, like Albatross, by the premises, they will be instructed to ensure their drivers do not sound horns and they don't cause untold noise and disruption. They can't say enough that we wanted to do everything right here, because the restrictions that they've had with the COVID, every business is struggling. Every late night refreshment premises, anyone that's putting on entertainment are struggling. And these hours, particularly the New Year's Eve one, again, it's not going to have a major impact. It's once a year. Generally, the Licensing Act would have allowed transferring up to 48 hours on a New Year's Eve event. 3 o'clock isn't, too long, I would suggest, for a New Year's Eve. They won't use that. Again, it's to say we'll shut at 1, 2 o'clock, but it gives us time to get people out just in case they go over, and it's just to prevent, really, the licence being, the licence. Yeah, sorry, no, that's fine. It's just protection, really.
Any questions for the applicants? Mr. Wilkinson, have you got any questions first? None at all. Any questions? Councillor Skelton.
Thank you. Just looking through some of the conditions. Obviously, we've just been talking about noise nuisance. Just looking at number 19, any noise caused from licensable activities will be monitored and any complaints from local residents dealt with in a sympathetic manner. These complaints will be recorded in a specific log for that purpose. I think the issue I kind of have with that's all fine and marvellous, but it doesn't actually specify something like and appropriate solutions implemented, which I think should be acceptable, I hope, to everybody. We just need to actually have something that action is going to be taken rather than just tea and sympathy given. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Skelton, any more questions? Councillor Hesselgrave.
Yes, on item 4 of the operating schedule, it talks about the DPS or designated member of staff able to retrieve and supply a copy of any relevant recordings, etc., etc. It doesn't specify at whose cost all this process will be borne.
Sure.
It's 4, number 4.
Yeah, I've got no objection to an addition to that, basically saying that the company will bear the cost as long as it's obviously related to the incident that the responsible authorities are looking into. Obviously, if it's a cost of something that's happened in the street and the responsible authorities or police would like CCTV, then obviously a cost should be really incurred to the actual person asking for the information.
Councillor Scrave.
I did also want to draw people's attention to item 21 on that, the clause 21. The DPS will undertake a risk assessment to consider the occasions where there is a requirement for the deployment of door supervisors at the premises. Any relevant concerns of the police shall be considered when making an assessment. I'm just asking what arrangements you have for liaison with the police in terms of such issues for an event. If you have, from your experience or by anticipation of the kind of event, what protocol have you got for notifying the police in good time for them to make an assessment of their own?
It's difficult because the police don't normally like to come forward and make an assessment, because then it puts the burden onto the police. So there are protocols in place where the DPS will talk to the police licensing team as and when necessary, but they're having no events that are sort of out of the ordinary at this time. But I'm sure that the DPS and the premises licence holder will discuss things with the police. Now, these conditions on here are really beyond and above what we really need to be putting in for the hour, because any conditions that are extra that you would request for that hour would be for the hour. What we're doing is we're putting a raft of conditions on here that actually it rewrites the licence basically to give confidence that the licensing objectives will be promoted. So that is beyond and above for the extra hour that we're asking for. But yes, I fully accept what the councillor said, and we will make provision to actually contact the police and the licensing authority if necessary. But it's not really an item that we need to put on here to make it So they've got to do that, because I don't believe that the police will come back with anything and say, well, you've got to have 4 on, because if there was 4 on and it kicked off and we needed 6 on, well, the police had 4. So I don't think they'll come forward and actually stick the neck out and say that.
Thank you.
Chair, I would like the reassurance of it being reduced to writing within the conditions that they're putting forward.
Sorry, Councillor, what condition would you like to see added onto that?
Well, I mean, it's for you to talk to your legal people about how you might put that as part of the wording, but something to effect that there will be a protocol of a risk assessment, and that the police will be contacted for their view if you feel that you might anticipate anything untoward during the proceedings.
It's a very difficult condition to add, because it's who perceives what's going to be a problem. We don't perceive there's going to be any issues with any of the events, because we're putting things in place as you know, as this licence said, we will work to this licence. And again, these conditions are additions. These are for an hour only. They're not for the licence as such. We've put these forward, and we believe that these are adequate conditions on it, and we're showing good faith that you know, we'll work to these. If it'll be down to yourselves, if you want to change a condition, then that's it within your remit to do that during this process now.
Chair, just in respect to that, I think what Councillor Hazelgrave was just trying to get at is obviously the applicants have put forward that they've put forward these new conditions which have been agreed with the police and environmental health to try and tidy up their premises licence. However, I can see from Councillor Hazelgrave's point that we need to ensure that these conditions are enforceable, as the applicant has said, and so if he reads it as an ambiguity, then in practical terms, how will it actually be enforced? So I think there is the potential for questions to be asked whilst the applicants are obviously in front of you, as to actually to look at some of those conditions in a bit more detail and tidy them up if needed. That's not saying that you're going to grant these conditions, because obviously you've got to consider the whole application. But if you were minded to, obviously in your deliberations, you won't have the opportunities to speak to the applicant there. So now is the opportunity to go through those conditions and, if required, look at whether or not any amendments would be necessary or whether or not any conditions may be redundant.
Thank you, Ms. Keeler. Any further questions for myself, Councillor Hazelgrave?
Not at the moment, Chair.
Apologies, Chair. If it may help, I know that obviously we went through the conditions previously, and I made a note of what we discussed. So if it may help all parties, I can go through that now just so we can have a clear note of that. I'm grateful. So turning first to page 8 of the bundle, so it's the current Annex 2. And it's shown as Appendix 4 at the top, but it's Annex 2 in the premises licence. So the current condition number 1 is CCTV system installed to monitor entrances, exits and other parts of the premises in order to address the prevention of crime objective. So obviously they're requesting that condition be removed. And from my looking at the proposed conditions, it looks as if that condition 1 is being replaced with proposed condition 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. Would that be correct? I'm grateful, Chair. I'll just make a note of this for your deliberations. In respect of the current condition number 2, it says a clear and legible notice outside the premises indicating the normal hours under the terms of the premises licence during which the licensable activities are permitted. Now, from our looking at that, it looked as if that one was removed in its entirety. Is that correct? And is there any reason specifically why that wanted been removed?
I don't think that...
Mr. Dunn, do you want to put your mic on for me?
Oh, apologies.
Sorry, which condition again, Lucy? Yeah, because we've got I think when that was put in, there was a misunderstanding why, and there's no necessity for that. You've got your licence summary that actually denotes all these hours. So I didn't think it was necessary to actually stick a sign outside saying we're open at such times.
Thank you. Then moving on to condition 3, it says clear and conspicuous notices warning of potential criminal activity such as theft that may target customers will be displayed. That looks as if that one's removed, and is that for the same reasons as number 2?
Yeah, it's we've had no issues with thefts within the premises, and it was when Andrew put this in initially, he just thought he'd put conditions on there, and they were never questioned by the police or anybody. So.
And then just moving on to condition 4, no selling of alcohol to drunk or intoxicated customers. That looks like it's been replaced by proposed condition 15.
It is, but I mean, it's a part of the other legislation anyway, so it's not a necessary condition.
And then moving on to condition number 5, staff will be well trained in asking customers to use premises in an orderly and respectful manner and prevent drinking alcohol at the retail unit. Example is that, or excluding canned or bottled beer? That, to the councillors and myself, didn't necessarily make sense in any event. Was that the...
Yeah, so we'll remove that and we'll put other conditions in that would actually be more enforceable than that.
Condition number 6, a logbook or recording system shall be kept upon the premises. That looks as if that's been made into condition number 10.
That's correct, yes.
And 7 also, in respect of that, the same under that condition 10. Condition number 8 is prominent, clear and legible notices will be displayed at the exit requesting the public to respect the needs of nearby residents and to leave the premises and the area quietly. That looks as if that's the new condition, proposed condition 17, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
The current condition number 9 is the licensee will ensure that staff who arrive early morning or depart late at night, example for unpacking, pricing newly delivered goods, when the business has ceased trading, conduct themselves in such a manner conduct themselves in such a manner to avoid causing disturbance to nearby residents. That looks as if that one you want removed, but it seems as if that could be quite a useful condition to have in operation. Do you have any comment to make in respect of that?
No, not at all. That can remain if the council want that to remain. I don't think there's any issue with that.
Sorry, I think maybe is that one to replace the disposable materials and bins and empty glass bottles. I think that one was put in to basically say that we won't put glass in bins in unreasonable hours. I think that's that one.
Which condition was that? Sorry.
So the one that we're talking about, number 9, be replaced for number 18. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, I think what the intention was and what it actually reads as is slightly different.
Obviously, Chair, it will be a matter for yourselves to consider in deliberations, but it's useful for that clarification there. So just moving on to number 10, customers will be asked not to stand around loudly talking in the street outside the premises, and that looks as if it is dealt with in new condition, proposed condition 17. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
Number 11, a challenge 25 sign, which is a retailing strategy that encourages anyone who is over 18 but looks under 25 to carry acceptable ID if they wish to buy alcohol. That looks as if it's been replaced by condition 14 and 15.
It is, and it's also a mandatory condition anyway.
Condition number 12, it says well-trained staff about requirement for persons' identification, age and establishment, etc. That looks as if it's now proposed condition 11 and 12.
Yeah, that's correct, and it'll come under the training as well.
And then under condition number 13, it says all the details provided in the training book will be available the retail unit, and that looks as if it's new condition 11.
That's correct.
I'm grateful for that. Then just moving on to your proposed conditions. And again, following on from Councillor Heselgrave's comments, I note your comments you've made about proposed condition number 4 in terms of the cost will be borne by the premises when it relates to an incident that's happened at the premises. If I can just ask you to look at proposed condition number 10. That says, all relevant incidents recognised as such by the responsible person will be recorded in an incident book/log, which will be kept on the premises for a period of not less than 12 months and will be made available upon a request by a police officer or an authorised officer as detailed within Section 13 of the Licensing Act 2003. The queries I've got in respect of that are, what is a relevant incident and who is the responsible person? Because again, when you're looking back to how it's enforceable, what do you class it as? And I think in terms of looking at that condition, it'd be useful to know or to tighten that up a bit to actually specify what it is that this condition actually is.
Yeah, I'd agree. The problem is with these conditions, if you put all incidents are going to be recorded, I mean, what is an incident? And that is where it's very ambiguous. So, and it's also what is an incident as you would see it, or what is an incident as you would see it. So the reason we put in there about the person that's actually recording it, they said, look, this is an incident. So that's why it was going to be recorded as such. Again, we're quite happy that it's tightened up, but obviously if you put all incidents, what is an incident? And it is very, very difficult.
And in respect of the responsible person, is that defined who it will be in the premises?
It's the responsible person. I would define that as the person that's actually reporting it at the time. So that is the responsible person.
So it wouldn't be a specified member of staff, it could be whoever, potentially?
Sorry, yes. Yes. I think the Act actually classes it as a responsible person if they've got any involvement with an incident, so that's why I put that in there. So you could be the responsible person, or I could be the responsible person, but yes, it would be a member of staff.
Yeah, I suppose they would be the ones who would be able to record it in an instant book as opposed to me going into the premises and asking to write in it. In respect of condition number 12, you've got all relevant staff will be trained in basic drugs awareness, but in condition number 11, you've put all staff will be trained in their relevant responsibilities. Why is there a differentiation between those two conditions? Because
if you've got a cleaner, you don't necessarily need a cleaner to actually be... I've put staff. So again, if we're looking at the broad picture, a cleaner or somebody that's not necessarily going to be working with the public doesn't necessarily need to be trained in drugs, but they do need to be trained in their responsible roles. So if you are a cleaner, you'll be trained in that. If you're a barman or bar lady or you're a glass collector, you'll be trained in your responsible roles. And if drugs form part of that, they will be trained in that.
So again, it's just looking at the enforceability of conditions, and it's useful that you've given that expansion there as to who you deem as relevant staff. So I think the councillors will find that useful when considering this matter. Proposed condition number 13, it says the premises will actively participate in any available local pub watch scheme whilst one is in operation. Do you know whether or not there is one in operation at the moment?
Yes, there is. Okay. In Derby, yes. But again, I can't... I wanted to reassure that the councillors that they're going to take an active role with licensable activities within the city and be a part of that community. If the pub watch though closes as a third party, it's going to be very difficult then to maintain that condition if it had not said whilst one.
And then proposed condition number 16, it says when live music is being carried on the premises, all doors and windows other than the doors to allow entry and egress to and from the premises will remain closed. Now this is one where we had a few issues about, because obviously we're living with COVID and guidance, some guidance has come out in terms of keeping places well ventilated. How would that condition work with those current guidance?
It's something that environment they requested. I don't know. So again, there could be a caveat in that to say that whilst we're under different legislation, if we need to keep them open, we'll keep them open, or remove it and we'll just use it. Use common sense. Obviously, we don't want to be breaching that, but it is a very... I don't know if you've ever been to this venue, but it is a very, very big area. There's a lot of ventilation. There's very, very high ceilings. So ventilation isn't necessarily going to be a massive issue in there because, you know, are the doors... There's a lot of ventilation anyway, isn't it? Even with the windows.
The big entrance and exits are like really big roller shutter doors, so there is it's chilly in there.
So the egress and entry and exits would be pretty much giving enough ventilation, I would suggest. But again, if that wants to be altered, then we'll stand by whatever you decide.
So it's useful that you just said, because that was the next query that I had, in terms of the entrance and exit. So the notes that we'd put down were what is the setup? Is there a porch or is it just an opening into the venue? So is it just that it's a wide open space or...
Yeah, so we have the main gate in which goes into an outside yard, and then the main entrance into the actual building itself is a 4-metre wide roller shutter door, which is the main entrance in that is open throughout all activities that go on in there.
So that's not straight off the street, that roller shutter one, or it is?
No, it's not. It's set back 10, 12 metres.
And that's open throughout your opening hours?
Yes.
Just moving then to, I know that Councillor Hazelgrave dealt with condition 19 in his questions. If we can look at proposed condition number 20, you've put, if a nominated taxi company is authorised by the premises, they will be instructed to ensure their drivers do not sound horns when waiting for customers leaving the premises. They will be asked to wait for customers, if possible, away from residential properties situated opposite the premises. And I note that you made reference to initial contact with Albatross. Has anything been put in place with them, or is it just at this stage initial talks?
Yeah, we have had confirmation from Albatross that we will have partnership with them and they will ensure that all their taxis wait further up the road, up John Street.
And in respect of this, would this be something which you'd promote within inside the premises in terms of if you need to get home, call this number, that type of thing?
Yeah, so that we'll have posters up with their number on for that to be the designated taxi service from the premises. But also on top of that, we will also make sure that people that have other taxis, we will have people on the street asking them to move further up the street to get their taxi further up there.
And you made reference to the taxi marshals when you were speaking to the councillors earlier. Is that a new thing you've put in place?
Yeah, it's just something when we have large events on and we don't have, it's just members of staff, they're not taxi marshals as such, it's not a certain person that we have in that does that job specifically, it's just the members of staff are asked, a number of members of staff that are trained to do that sort of thing, or they go out there at the end of the event and ask people to move up the street.
So that would just be on larger events, not
Yeah.
every time it's open?
Yeah, yeah.
And had these people been put in place after the initial complaint by Mr. Wilkinson? Then just a couple of bits on continuity or consistency. In respect of 22 and 23, obviously we've got the being employed as door supervisors. Obviously there would have to be SIA approved to be able to be a door supervisor, but we're wondering whether or not there was any reason why you hadn't put SIA approved within that.
It's a mandatory condition, so I didn't think we needed to duplicate that.
And then, Chair, I think it'd also be useful from when we were speaking prior to this starting, in terms of we have had Mr Wilkinson now point out where he resides, and I wonder whether or not I could pass my map across to the applicant and ask them just to put where their entrance and exit ways are, just for yourselves in deliberation. And Chair, I was just saying if there was some condition if they happy with the next Thank you, Chair. My final question, just following on from our discussions in respect to this, is have there been any TENS applications at the premises since it's been in operation?
Yeah, there's been one 10 application that was on, was it the New Year's Eve? Because obviously there was an objection to this, so there was an event going ahead, so 10 had to be put in place because obviously this wouldn't have been determined at this time.
It's just the one that there's been since it's been at that location. I'm grateful, Chair.
Any more questions? Councillor Skelton.
Right. Just on the proposed condition 19, I did mention before about a few words being added on. Let me get where it is. So that these complaints will be recorded in a specific log for that purpose and appropriate solutions implemented. Just seems sensible to me that that would be added.
Councillor, appropriate to whom? That's it can't be too ambiguous. I agree that you can put something on there, but it just needs the wording's got to be, because I mean appropriate to these might not be appropriate to the person making the complaint. So again, it's quite a difficult condition.
Well, instead of the word appropriate, you could put reasonable. That is used in legal terminology. And that means reasonable to somebody who has full knowledge of the situation. So it's what the average person would think would be reasonable.
So we could put reasonable to all parties?
Just reasonable. Chair, also, I was wondering, obviously some descriptions were given about the entrance and the fact that is fairly open. I have never actually been into the premises, so I just wanted some clarification on that. So am I right in thinking that when you actually approach the building, once you've gotten through the courtyard, there is a sort of more of a large entrance rather than a door, so it's sort of a few metres wide, and that the whole sort of area is sort of open to the outside. Obviously, you have music and etc. and that sort of thing there, and you've mentioned before about going to the sort of borders of the premises and checking that the noise levels are not too loud, and there's just checking there hasn't been any issues with that at all.
I've spoken to Environmental Health and they say not. Mr Wilkinson's not mentioned any issues with music emanating from the premises. Mr Wilkinson's mentioned the issues when customers leave at the end of the evening. So I think the provisions that are in place at the moment tend to be working.
Right, thank you for that.
Any more questions from anybody? Okay, Mr Dunn, do you want to sum up?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, an application's been placed into to the local authorities. We like to address the existing licence, replacing the current conditions with the ones that have been discussed, hopefully tidying the licence up and making it more enforceable for the responsible authorities. We'd like the council to consider an extra hour to help with the premises being more viable as a business, and we would ask that the council consider the application and grant it with any additional amendments to the conditions that we've just discussed.
Thank you, Mr Dunn. Over to you, Miss Walker, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have nothing extra to add at this point. Thank you.
Okay, what we'll do then, ladies and gents, is we'll deliberate and... Sorry.
Whether or not Mr Wilkinson wished to sum up at all from his representation.
My apologies. Mr Wilkinson, would you like to sum up with your representation?
Yes, the only thing I'd like to say is I apologise for not replying to your email, because I would have preferred to actually deal with this matter face to face before this meeting. But if Bluster's Market does put these items that they've said they would about taxes and Marshals, I'm not against anything, give them the extra hour, because it is good for the town and it is good for the area. And it's a lovely place to go. I haven't been in myself, but yeah, if these things are put into place, then I've got no problems with that.
Could I just say thank you for that, Mr Wilkinson, and it doesn't matter about the email, but obviously we want to offer, have a meeting. Anything you've got problems with, you go directly to the licence holder and she will give you a contact number as well. I just want to make sure that Mr Wilkinson's okay.
I'd say you need to invite him in for a coffee and show him around, and so he knows exactly what the setup is. Yeah, and a beer as well, there you go. Okay, thank you for that, Mr Wilkinson. I think what we'll do now is we'll deliberate, and instead of you guys having to wait around, we'll get your decision notice sent out as soon as possible, if that's okay. Ms Keeler?
Chair, yes, what I'd ask for is possible, if people are happy to give me their email addresses, we'll get the notice sent out via email if you're happy to accept service that way, rather than have you hanging around. Apologies, Mrs Walker.
Once the decision notice has been published, I can make sure all relevant parties get a copy.
I'm grateful, Mrs Walker, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think that concludes today's meeting. Thank you all in attendance, and yourself, Mr Wilkinson, and we'll get the decision notice out to you as soon as possible. We normally say 7 days, but it'll be out with you before that by email. Thank you all once again.
Thank you.